Hello everyone. Welcome to another episode of Goodness. Tourism is one of the world's largest industries and the economics of many nations are driven by. According to the Travel and Tourism Worldwide Research Report by Statista, the travel and tourism industry is projected to reach more than $927 billion by 2024. So all is going well, is it? Or is there something brewing below the surface? Tourism industry is closely connected with hotel, hospitality and the transport industry and many other sectors. Much it is based on keeping the tourist happy, occupied and equipped with the things they need during their time away from home. So mass tourism, this is something for you to note. The mass tourism has developed in the Western societies since the 1950s. In a period of strong economic growth, the urban and industrial regions of Western Europe, North America, and Japan are the first countries issuing international tourists worldwide. The globalization of tourism is primarily the result of continued growth in international tourist flows that spread first to the oldest tourist destination, Western and Mediterranean Europe, to emerging destinations, from the center to the periphery, until the borders of the world. Mass tourism is categorized by an extreme concentration of tourists in one place. So mass tourism is very popular due to the lower cost and standard services, especially all-inclusive packages. The services provided under the all-inclusive packages include air transportation, ground transportation, accommodation, food and beverage, unlimited local liquor, morning and evening tea refreshments, and sometimes the excursions. Due to a constant overwhelming demand, the tour operators, destination management companies, hotels, airlines, cruise lines, and other service providers make large-scale economics and provide tourism products and services at a cheaper rate. So is mass tourism being done at the expense of others? Anti-tourism protests have been sweeping across Europe, with demonstrations taking place in the Netherlands, Greece, and Spain. Now let's look at what's been happening in Spain. Surging visitor numbers, soaring housing prices, and the rise of selfie-seeking tourists have created situations that are totally out of balance, a UNESCO official said, adding that a failure to address these issues could see the Spanish wave of protest against mass tourism extend across Europe. In the recent times, tens of thousands of protesters have taken to the streets in Spain's most popular destinations, calling for curbs on mass tourism and a rethink of the business model. Why? Heard about straw that breaks the camel's back? Tourism has exacerbated existing concerns over the affordability of housing as the spread of short-term accommodations squeezes local residents out of the market. This has increased the anxiety and frustrations for the people. Workers at some cities are left with little choice but to live in vans, caravans, and tents. Slogans against the tourists, "A family used to live here," or "Go home," have appeared in many places. Spanish island of Mallorca, the organizers claiming the island's tourism model impoverishes workers and enriches only a few. So what else is happening? Where is it happening? In Greece. Greece, home to iconic landmarks like the Acropolis, issued a plea to curb tourism, citing concerns over the increasing number of holidaymakers swarming the city. The backlash against the tourists have materialized in various forms, from graffiti to public demonstrations, and even instances of vandalism and arson dating back to last year. The large signs plastered on buildings carry strong messages, with one stating, "Tourists go home, Greek state kills," Another despite two Airbnb towers engulfed in flames, accompanied by the caption, "Tourists enjoy your stay in the cemetery of Europe." Slogans such as "No tourists, no hipsters," and "Burn Airbnb" echo the sentiment reverberating through the streets. Protesters lament on not only overcrowding caused by the tourists, but also the displacement of locals from their homes. Concerns mount over proliferations of Airbnb in the city, with locals fearing the erosion of traditional neighborhoods. Property developers acknowledge the detrimental effects of over-tourism, emphasizing the importance of preserving Greek culture to attract tourists genuinely interested in the country's heritage. So, what is the Greek government's stance on this? Despite growing opposition, the Greek government remains persistent in its pursuit of tourism. Initiative like Roads Week, offering free holidays to British tourists affected by wildfires, demonstrates the government's commitment to attracting visitors despite local opposition. Where else and what else is going on? In Netherlands, Amsterdam will no longer allow new hotel buildings to be built as part of the fight against mass tourism, according to the statement issued by the local government. "We want to make and keep the city livable for residents and visitors. This means no over-tourism, no new hotels, and no more than 20 million hotels overnight stays by tourists per year," it said in a statement. New hotel in Amsterdam can only be built if another hotel closes, if the number of sleeping places doesn't increase, and if the new hotel will be better, for example, more sustainable. So why is a sudden uprise against mass tourism? Mass tourism presents significant challenges, many say. Overcrowding and strain on infrastructure. A large influx of tourists can overwhelm a local infrastructure, leading to traffic congestions, lack of parking facilities, and strain on public transportation. That pertains to the damage caused to natural areas, including littering, pollution, habitat destruction, and erosion due to high footfall. Cultural erosion. There may be loss of local traditions and culture due to the commercialization of local customs and areas of cultural importance. Seasonal unemployment. Many of the jobs in the tourism industry are seasonal and temporary, leading to periods of unemployment for local residents. Rise in cost of living. Large number of tourists can cause increased demand and thus an increase in the prices of goods, services, and housing, which may be unaffordable for local residents. Dependency on tourism. Economies heavily dependent on tourism are vulnerable to external factors such as global economic downturn and natural disasters. Given that, what's happening in Kenya? Tourism is the third largest source of foreign exchange revenue, following diaspora remittances and agriculture. Tourism may offer financial success for many Kenyans and improve economic growth, but due to its negative impact on the lives of Kenyan tribal people, as they have been forced to change their lifestyle to accommodate for tourists. Therefore, the traditional culture is getting exposed. Under some circumstances, they have been forced off their land to provide tourist facilities. Young children, majority young girls, are sexually exploited through the influence of European mass tourism. The employees who work in the tourism industry are offered little job security due to seasonal employment and are often underpaid. In most circumstances, the profits from tourism go to large companies, their resort owners or tour companies rather than supporting the local community. Possibly the largest negative impact of mass tourism in Kenya is the damage being done to the wildlife environment. The wildlife in the popular game parks is at higher risk due to the tourist influx to these particular parks. Animals and the environment are being disturbed by the many safari tours. Often the tour buses get within close vicinity of the animals and disturb the normal lifestyle. This affects their natural cycle, which will eventually decline their numbers. The hunting and mating success of lions and cheetahs are dramatically declined, also due to the introduction of tour buses. Another popular form of transport through national reserves is hot air balloons, which also disturb the natural lifestyle of the wildlife. The animals and also the environment is being put at risk due to pollution. Tourist lodges produce mass amount of rubbish, which is disposed but poses threat to animals as they can become obsessed by consuming the rubbish and poisoned by litter containing chemicals. The environment is also put at risk due to the influx of tourists in particular areas. As the resources for fresh water are limited, extra pressure is added to accommodate for the increasing tourist numbers. So it is not only unsustainable, but also doing more harm than good for some. Now let's look at Sri Lanka. From the time when the Sri Lankan authorities paid attention to promote tourism in the island, probably from mid-1960s, tourism has become one of the major sources of foreign exchange earnings in the island. Sri Lanka as a tourist destination introduces 8 different tourist attractor products: beaches, heritage, wildlife, scenic beauty, mind and body wellness, festivals, sports and adventure and essence. After the boom in the tourism, the beach fronts were being rapidly brought up by tourist establishment, after which they were surrounded by walls to block the locals' access to these areas, which had since become private property. Tourism has direct impact on the price levels and the consumption behavior of the host population. Tourism brings some positive as well as the negative benefits to the island. Compared with what we gained over tourism, losses are higher in socio-cultural terms. The environment degradation, archaeological ruins, illegal businesses, black money fraud thefts, drugs trafficking, prostitution, HIV threat, gambling, and rising crime rates and identified social costs from international tourism. The child sex is one of the major issues raised by tourism in Sri Lanka. So the most vulnerable group of tourism is found to be the younger generation. Research shows youngsters believe that elders also were confirmed that going behind a foreigner is a gateway to success. This hypothesis has proved that those who started as beach boys or some other form of sex workers have reached upper middle class in their assets. They believe that they can have valuable things or secure a chance to go abroad by keeping close contact with foreigners. Also, the demonstration effect of tourism in the area cause increased leakages. The crucial issue of such relationship with tourists is the negligence of the social cost of tourism, either by victims or by their parents. You know, the town called Hikaduwa, the south of Sri Lanka, became the tourist resort. That area was self-sufficient in food. The main occupation was fishing, paddy cultivation, and cottage industries based on coconut products. After the end of 1970s, everything including physical surrounding, values and attitudes of the simple folk had changed. The youngsters followed the style of foreign tourists. Some dimensions of social status such as caste and creed have been replaced by money, irrespective of its derivatives. In contrast, it has provided a variety of employment in different capacities in restaurants, guest houses, shops and the transport sectors. And some are involved in their own mini businesses related to tourism. So the international tourism has a significant impact on the social cultural structure of the host country. Some middle class personnel who are involved in the tourism industry in various capacities such as managers and others view that even though they're not happy with the worst aspect of the European culture, they accept tourism as by and large what the country needs to earn foreign exchange. Though it is possible to calculate earnings from tourism, but it is impossible to calculate the social cost numerically as its outcome. So, is there an alternative to this? Mass tourism is part of the historical construction. It has emerged on the day after the Second World War, with sustained economic growth provided by the Western countries. The economic affirmation of newly industrialized countries confirms this phenomenon. Mass tourism matches the emergence of the middle class and the democratization of tourism in rich countries. It is centered on some reputed international destination. There are economic, social, cultural, and ecological consequences caused by this massive concentration of visitors. In this context, in which reflection on alternative tourism approaches has developed, it is about developing new forms of sustainable tourism that integrate local populations and both natural and human environment of host countries. Alternative tourism is not an old concept. The concept has been there in the tourism world for about 2 decades now. The tourists who are tired of laying down on a beach and reading a book with a suntan lotion are increasingly moved to an alternative tourism, which is experience-based. So the alternative tourism takes the tourists away from their comfort zones and give them an exotic experience which is close to the nature, culture, history, and even the religion of the country that they visited. Alternative tourism concerns a varieties of approaches: ecotourism, agrotourism, health and wellness tourism, backpacking tourism, pro-poor tourism, volunteer tourism, spiritual tourism, community tourism, ethical tourism, and it keeps going. A market to earn big by serving a few and light groups. There are many possible alternative approaches which allow to get out of the dominant mass tourism model. Beyond the economical issues, we must also consider the social and cultural dimensions, the relationship to the environment, the participation of host communities, and develop sustainable tourism strategies with more significant economic benefits to the host country. Ecotourism is the most underlying alternative approach, often considered as a panacea, capable of reconciling economic development, environmental protection, and the well-being of communities. Highlights the interest of the concept of the ecotourism, considered primarily as a form of tourism oriented towards relatively undeveloped natural areas and protection of territories, opposed to mass tourism operating in the built environment. Priority access to the conservation of resources. The main objective of ecotourism is to regulate attendance level and control the consumption of natural resources. Gradually, the concept of ecotourism grants increasing importance to the human dimension by focusing on the cultural aspects and more generally, heritage. This approach facilitates the integration of host communities in a sustainable project. Some say ecotourism qualifier is demean, often used just as a marketing tool for the tourism industry to address the economic losses caused by the abandonment of mass tourism, being a growth strategy to the extent that the ecotourism doesn't limit any mass tourism. So who is responsible to turn this around? As a traveler, a holiday still can be achieved by putting together a trip off the beaten track. Choose locations that still receive few tourists. Stay at small-scale lodges and homestays and eat at locally owned restaurants and food trucks. The tourism supply chain must also bear its fair share of responsibility. While popular destinations are understandably an easier sell, redirecting tourism beyond the popular honey spots like urban heritage sites or overcrowded beaches needed greater impetus to avoid shifting the problems elsewhere. Local authorities must exercise policy measures that establish capacity limits, then ensure that they are upheld, and if not, be held responsible for their action. Those who are investing in tourism should support initiatives that elevate local priorities and needs and not simply exercise a model of maximum extraction for shareholders in the supply chain. A coordinated approach by all parties will lead to a fruitful outcome for all. Otherwise, protest over mass tourism will spread like a wildfire across the ocean. With that, I will leave you today. Until then, you look after yourself. I will meet you in another episode of Goodness. Thank you.